Today we are issuing new guidance that empowers manufacturers to revise their DEF system software in existing vehicles and equipment to prevent sudden, severe derates and eliminate abrupt shutdowns that create real-world disruptions.
Welcome to the show. I'm Ashley Blackford.
And I'm Scott Thompson. We're going to start, Ashley, with that big news out of the Environmental Protection Agency this week.
Yes, in a move that is being applauded by truckers and trucking groups alike, the EPA on Tuesday announced guidance that urges engine and equipment manufacturers to revise DEF system software in existing vehicles and equipment to prevent sudden speed and power losses.
And here's EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin making that announcement from the Iowa State Fair in Des Moines.
The frustration with DEF has been nearly universal. For farmers, truckers, and diesel vehicle operators, they've had to incorporate power loss and other issues caused by selective catalytic reduction systems that use DEF into their everyday life. When DEF runs out, or if a sensor fails, vehicles are programmed to automatically lose significant speed and power, leaving farmers stranded during harvest season and truckers stuck with transporting America's goods. These DEF systems do not always operate as intended and can cause operational delays and economic hardship. These failures are often quite inconvenient, but worse than that, they threaten operational reliability, delay deliveries, interrupt farm work, and halt construction projects. That's unacceptable. The best part about this issue is that it's so easily fixable. And the Trump EPA is on it.
The action comes by way of guidance to engine and equipment manufacturers, calling on them to revise their DEF system software on both existing vehicles and equipment to prevent sudden shutdowns known as derates, which began when DEF became mandatory in 2010. When a shutdown like that happens on a heavy-duty truck right now, they can be forced to suddenly crawl at a speed of 5 miles an hour if the issue isn't resolved within 4 hours.
These modifications provide more flexibility and reliability without compromising air quality or emissions reductions. We've even streamlined the process to go about this. No separate EPA approvals will be required beyond our guidance letter we're releasing today. And manufacturers have assured EPA they are ready to take action on these changes. Consider the status quo, where you are currently forced to come to a screeching halt of 5 miles per hour within 4 hours, regardless of circumstances. Now, here are the specifics on how we significantly improve this situation. For heavy-duty trucks, for example, after a confirmed fault, like a failed sensor, the driver will see a light and no other impact for 650 miles or 10 hours. This first interval is designed to have no impact for at least one workday after the issue is detected. Then the engine is derated 15%, which won't limit the vehicle's speed. For reference, a Class 8 tractor needs approximately 250 horsepower to go 70 miles per hour. The engine will continue to perform like this, not limiting the truck's ability to accomplish its mission for 4,200 miles, or roughly 2 work weeks before reducing power. Only after 10,500 miles, or 160 hours, the equivalent of 4 work weeks, will the vehicle see a speed derate down to 25 miles per hour where it will remain until repaired. We expect most operators to repair their vehicles within a couple days or weeks, and all to be able to make the repairs before they reach the 10,500 miles or 160 hours limit.
In a statement, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association applauded the move, thanking Administrator Zeldin for listening to the men and women behind the wheel who keep America's economy moving. OOIDA President Todd Spencer wrote that EPA's guidance establishes more common-sense inducement schedules that will help drivers maintain safe control of their vehicles as they diagnose and remedy faulty DEF and selective catalytic reduction systems.
The statement went on to say that more flexible inducement speeds and times will help truckers finish their trips, plan for necessary maintenance, and avoid parking their truck for an extended period simply because of a false alarm. Nonsensical inducement rules have sidelined small business truckers for too long, Spencer wrote. And this accelerated relief shows what can be achieved when regulators hear directly from the people doing the job.
So we know what the EPA is aiming to do here now. Let's get into specifics with the help of some reinforcements. We've got OOIDA Executive Vice President Lewie Pugh and OOIDA Compliance and Regulatory Supervisor Jim Jefferson here in Studio A. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And joining us on the phone from OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office is Jay Grimes, OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs. How you doing, Jay?
Doing well. Good to be with you.
Good to have you. We got a lot to get to here. I want to start by kind of going around the table and the phone, I suppose, here, and getting your initial reaction to the DEF announcement. Lewie, let's start with you.
I'm happy to see it. I'm glad that the administration and the EPA are listening to truckers. Kind of reminds me of when Trump was in the last time and we had some EPA hearings, but a little disappointed that they didn't get rid of DEF all the way together. I'm sure our members will be too. But I mean, hey, this is a big first step. We'll take it, and getting rid of the EVs and all that stuff. So we'll take it. And hopefully, as time goes on, we'll get moved on down the road. I know that they have to do these things in baby steps.
Yeah.
You know, you just can't take the whole bite out of the apple at once as much as sometimes we'd like them to.
Yeah, and we'll certainly get into those specifics here in just a moment. But, Jim, your reaction to the news?
Yeah, I agree with Lewie. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. We get a lot of calls on issues with the DEF system, so it's definitely a step in the right direction. Hopefully we can push that a little bit farther and get DEF eliminated completely.
Yeah.
I think that's what most of these guys are looking for is just to get rid of it because it's not beneficial.
And Jay?
Yeah, I think it shows that EPA is listening to the men and women who are driving these vehicles, have to deal with when they're not working the way they're supposed to. And, on the heels of the endangerment finding proposal, which would roll back some burdensome greenhouse gas emissions, there were a lot of questions on if that was going to apply to DEF. And the answer is no, but I think this guidance today shows that EPA understands some of the problems that are happening out there. This guidance is kind of a quick fix that can go into effect pretty quickly. And I think it also signals, they're working on considering some other options that might be coming down the road.
I think fair to say consensus on DEF is not positive. I'm curious, though, Jim, how much do you hear about this?
We get a lot of calls from members with problems with DEF. Here's an example of an average day for a guy that has an issue like this. They start the day off, everything's great. They start the vehicle up, they're off on the road. They get into their trip, the check engine light comes on with a DEF code fault. So now they've got a warning. They've got 4 hours before it starts to derate. And they're regulated at 55 miles per hour at that point. So now they've got to find a shop so they can get it in and get it looked at and see what's going on with it. So, you get into midday, they get another alert that says they've got 60 minutes before the truck derates to 5 miles per hour. So they finally get it into a shop. Shop guy says, oh, yeah, we can help you out. But that's a part that we got to order and have overnighted in. We don't have it available right now. So now they're stuck. Now they got to spend money on a hotel. They've got additional fuel expense to get to the shop. They've got food expense overnight. Part doesn't come in until the next day. So now they got to call up the broker and say, hey, this load's going to be late. They got to deal with that. We all know that if the load's late, the broker's going to charge you for it. So now they're going to lose money on that as well. They finally get the truck running the next day. They get back in the truck and head out to deliver. But over the course of that, they've got 24 hours in downtime. They've got lost revenue. They've got additional expenses from hotels and food, plus the reputation of, well, now my load is late, and that's what the broker's going to think of me. So the broker may not give them another load.
Yeah.
And that's assuming that they even get the truck in when you get there.
Right.
You may pull up to that shop and they'll be like, well, we're booked right now. We can't even look at this for 2 days. Yeah. Which is a real world scenario. It happens a lot as well.
The thing that's maddening, too, about it is, before 15 years ago, this wasn't
an issue.
This wasn't an issue.
No. Right.
Exactly. What's maddening to me about it, and I say this every time I've testified about this, every hearing I've been on this and everything, did we really fix a problem? or do we create more of a problem? Because nobody talks about the unintended consequences of this rule in the first place. Trucks lost fuel economy. So by losing fuel economy, what's that mean? That means we have to drill more oil. We have to haul more oil. We have to refine more oil. We have to pump more, we have more emissions going out because the trucks aren't getting as good fuel mileage. So you have that. Then we throw this DF stuff into the mix that has to be made from urea and get it from the ground, process it, all the things. Them stupid plastic jugs that a lot of truck stops now have pumps.
Yeah.
But before they all had pumps, you see them stupid plastic jugs in boxers or whatever that they come in everywhere, and you still see them some.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, how much pollution is that putting in the landfills?
Yeah.
You know, so again, did we really fix the problem? Because trucks once they went to electronic engines in the mid-'90s, or late,
much cleaner,
yeah. Much more efficient. Now, hey, I owned a 2012 International, and it didn't have DEF. It stuck with EGR, and it had its own problems for damn sure. But I mean, I will say it was clean. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was clean burning. But again, did we really? I guess nobody can ever tell me or ever say, did what we tried to fix offset what it cost us, like I said, with the unintended consequences of this stuff. Not to mention the mountains and mountains and mountains of parts, because it's taken 15 years to get this stuff to work half-assed correctly, if it's, at the most. And it's constantly, I know with my truck, it's constantly, well, you got to put this on now because this part's better than that part. So now we're manufacturing more parts and, downtime, and it takes more trucks to be on the road. It's more congestion because these trucks are not, you can't depend on. They're not as dependable as the trucks were prior to this as well.
Yeah, and all it takes is one sensor to fail, and the truck's in the shop. And the sensor is about the size of a pen. Yeah. So for a part the size of a pin causes all of these problems and all this expense for a driver out there.
And to that point too, Jim, we were talking earlier, the folks that are having problems with DEF right now, a lot of them are having a lot of problems.
Yes.
It's like if it goes bad, one day,
really
the
bad.
chances of it going bad again, I mean, you get calls like that all the time.
Yeah, I had a call just yesterday from a guy that called in, and he has had his truck in the shop. In the last 4 weeks, he's had the truck in the shop 6 times for DEF-related problems, sensors and things that needed to be fixed.
Yeah. From a regulatory standpoint, Jay, and, to your point, Lewie, you said initially this is a good first step. I think most truckers out there, especially those who have had problems with DEF before, would like to see this go away entirely. The EPA did not go that route, Jay, and I think there's a reason for that. Can you talk a little bit about the process here and why this is being looked at as a first step, and maybe what does the second step look like and third on down the line?
Yeah, and there's a couple different paths that all of these DEF, SCR, NOx emissions rules kind of emanate from, going back to 2010, 2014. And those are regulations that are on the books. And the process to withdraw those rules, amend those rules can be, years long, as we know. So when you kind of go the guidance route to make, small correctable changes, that can be done a little quicker. And this guidance is going to kind of update those inducement schedules, allowing more time for drivers to diagnose, remedy their problems, stay on the road, not to pull over immediately just because of a false sensor. So you're going to have a lot more lead time to deal with that. Kind of moving ahead to the next NOx rule that is currently scheduled to go into effect in model year 2027, which creates some more significant NOx emission standards levels. But also a big piece of this new rule is more self-diagnosis for drivers, the ability to understand when your DEF is not working properly. this new rule was going to have some more inducement relief. The guidance is going to kind of bridge the gap for that. But we also know at the same time that the current administration has indicated they're reviewing that NOx rule as well. So there might be some changes down the line over the next 2 years before some of the next rules are going into effect. I think this guidance today is another indication that the administration is listening to the industry. And I think they may be considering some more changes to those 2027 rules, maybe potentially looking at some of those older rules that are on the books now. Ideally, we want to have a practical, achievable emission standards, because one aspect to this, and something that we've told EPA for years, is that if these systems are too costly, and that's kind of what we're seeing on some of the newer vehicles with all this technology, drivers, motor carriers are going to, go to those older trucks, and you're not going to get the emissions reductions that EPA wants to see. So we got to find a more achievable middle ground. As Lewie mentioned, the trucks that have been coming out for going back to the 90s do a pretty good job of getting that cleaner air. And some of the technical and technology problems are really hard to deal with, really costly, really timely to get fixed. But this guidance is going to allow a lot more time to really understand what the problems is with those systems, be able to better schedule your maintenance, and to complete your trip before you have to pull over. Right now, it's I think a 4-hour window, and you're going to be down to 5 miles an hour.
Yep.
The guidance here is much more common sense. Mileage windows, time windows, and speed windows.
Now, we've reached out to the OEMs for comment, and we'll provide those reactions when we hear back from them. But what about the feasibility of this? EPA said they've developed this plan in collaboration with the manufacturers, but what's this going to look like? It's obviously an easier fix, I would assume, for the newer trucks, starting with model year 2027.
Yeah. And Jim or Lewie?
Yeah, that's kind of the next step to drop. And again, when you're looking at these EPA rules, and again, one of the problems with these historical regulations is that the EPA has jurisdiction over the engine manufacturer. They're not having jurisdiction over the end consumer, the small business trucker that has to purchase these vehicles. So the truck manufacturers, the OEMs, are the ones that are going to have to be in compliance. And it's really hard to predict what their business model is going to be. We've seen a press release already from the Truck and Engine Manufacturers Association saying that the manufacturers are preparing to make the new programming available on a staggered basis across many different model years, configurations, and variants. So, and from what we've heard from EPA, it's the intent to get this stuff rolled out pretty quickly. But I think, as Jim mentioned, all the millions of trucks that may need to be updated is going to take some time, hopefully sooner rather than later. And we don't know, if there's going to be costs associated or, how long it's going to take to get these completed.
Well, that's the thing too, Jay. We were talking about this earlier before we flipped the mics on. The questions about what this is going to look like. So if you're going in with an existing vehicle with a DEF system on it, you're going to be going in essentially for a software update. Is that right, Jim? That's the way you understand it, and Lewie?
Yeah, that's the way I understand it.
Which should be a pretty simple process in theory.
Right. So the questions that
exactly.
that we're going to get after this are, okay, where do I go to get this done?
Right.
How long is that going to take? And most importantly, how much is that going to cost?
Yeah, and we don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Right now.
Well, I'm sure it'll be based on how long it takes to do it. So you're probably going to pay an hour or two of service. It's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
For guys and gals out there that are getting their trucks done. I mean, I can't believe it take more than an hour or two to reprogram the computer, but who knows?
Who knows?
And I mean, that's the thing with all this crap, that it's so expensive. Just like Jim talking about the person with 4 of these problems in a month. Service rates in garages are, most truck garages are $200 an hour now.
Yeah.
So not only you have that time, but you have all that time. And, a lot of times with these sensors, what the problem is, the mechanic probably knows the sensor is wrong, but he's got to do all these other stupid checks first, which, go into 2 or 3 hours of diagnostics just to figure out exactly what the problem is.
Yeah. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, maybe, but is there a scenario where I think I already know the answer, where the OEMs are like, hey, come on in, at your convenience. We'll do the software update. It'll take 5-10 minutes. You can be on your way.
Wouldn't we like to believe that's the way it works?
That's what I'm saying. Maybe I'm being too Pollyannish here.
Okay, Pollyanna. Well, yeah. I'm sure that for some members and some folks out there, if you have a good relationship with a garage or a dealer that you work with, they'll probably work with you on that. But yeah, I think most places are just going to get charged to do it.
Yeah. And these are things, too, I'm sure, Jay, in your conversations with EPA, and Lewie, you've had conversations with EPA. Todd Spencer's had conversations with them as well, laying out why this is such a problem. I think you testified back in 2022, a few years ago, to the EPA and essentially called them out and said, hey, this stuff it's not making sense, for the reasons that you laid out earlier. They are very receptive, it seems like, to what OOIDA has been telling them about this very, this very issue, issues that are similar to it. As we look at the deregulatory process, it is encouraging to see them taking a swat at this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's totally encouraging. I mean, there are a couple of people on the internal side of EPA that we've dealt with in the past, and them or their spouses have some trucks, and they understand firsthand these problems, and they've really been trying to help us along the way. And of course, get caught up in political stuff. That's the problem with all these agencies. They get caught up in political stuff. And, I'm the first person I say all the time, agencies shouldn't be political. Mm-hmm. EPA, FMCSA, none of these agencies should be political. But unfortunately, they are.
Yeah. It's just the nature of the way it is.
It's just the way it works, and it shouldn't be. So, I'm not giving the end, and I don't want to sound like I'm giving OEMs and these people a pass, but, OEMs have put on bear a heck of a cost in all this because they've been told to do this for so long. So they've been doing things to try to get these trucks and studying and figuring out ways not only for the internal combustion engine and exploratory, but also for electric trucks. Now all that stuff's getting pushed out of here, and we're going back to the old way, which is good. And I'm sure they'll agree that they're probably happy about it. But just thinking about the money, they've laid out a lot of money on this, too, unfortunately, too. And it's, it's a shame that they got sent down that rabbit hole in the first place.
Yeah, because now you're basically trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Right.
Yeah.
And the people paying for it are...
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, the trucker is the one that gets stuck paying for all this
Getting
crap.
the toothpaste everywhere.
Yeah,
I'm trying to keep the analogy going, Lewie. Yeah. Jay, your conversations with EPA, can you talk a little bit about that? Because, we talk about first steps. I'm wondering what the next steps look like.
Well, kind of separately from the DEF guidance and those rules, we know EPA is going to be holding a public hearing on the endangerment finding proposal, which applies to the Phase 3 rule on electric vehicles that is set to go into effect right now in model year 2027. I think we're optimistic that will get withdrawn, and then previous greenhouse gas emissions. So we're going to be testifying in a public hearing with EPA next week. That public comment period is also open through September 15th, and that proposal is wide-ranging, not only affecting trucking rules, but light and medium duty vehicles, some power plant stuff. There's a whole lot in there. And that's going to be a big undertaking for EPA that, at the end of the day, if that gets through, there's going to be quite a few benefits. I think separately back to DEF, we're going to continue to have some focused conversations with EPA so they continue to hear from the experts on the road about what can be done, what can be amended, what needs to happen to really get rid of these DEF problems long term.
I'm curious, either Jim or Lewie, are there any concerns to be had with this move?
Oh, I guess my biggest concern is when we go in there and start jacking with the computers again.
Yeah.
And does that cause problems that nobody knew about or thought about, or unintended consequences? Which then, I like to hope that they can go in there, reprogram the computers, and it all works flawlessly, and the trucks now have a much more grace period. But it always seems like no matter what you do, as somebody who IT loves, have on speed dial, with my computer.
They've got your poster up down in the IT department.
Yeah, I know they love me.
They're like, keep this man out of here.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Block this man's calls.
Yeah, so that's my biggest concern. I mean, again, I'm hoping, and my second concern is that this doesn't turn into, well, we did this and then they just sort of,
We're good. We're done.
good, yeah, and
You're
move on
welcome.
to something else.
Jim, you got any concerns?
I mean, my concern would be if we get this in place and we do this, and then 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, a change in administration, and then they change everything back, and we go right back to where we're at right now.
Yeah. And that is
A possibility.
entirely possible too. We've got to head for a break here in a couple of minutes, but real quick, and I just want to go around the table. In terms of what you would like to see EPA kind of maybe do next, what would you like to see out of the coming months, I suppose, after this move kind of goes into effect?
Go ahead.
I would like to see them go a little bit farther and make this permanent.
Yeah.
As opposed to making it where it can be changed again.
Which would cut off, the concern that you
make it
talked
a
about,
permanent move so that these guys don't have to worry about it popping up again in the future.
Yeah. Lewie?
Allow them to do away with DEF completely. And for those people who maybe I've heard rumors that get that stuff removed from their truck, that's no longer a huge fine. I'm just,
the rumors,
maybe. Yeah, the rumors, because, they just was trying to make their truck be more efficient and run better. So if that really does happen out there, that they're not got this big DOT or the big EPA fines hanging over their heads, and that the shops will not work on their trucks again and stuff like that. So that's what, if I can have what I want, that's what I like to see happen.
Jay, Lewie left you 30 seconds. What would you like to see next?
I think continue to keep their pledge of reconsidering and reviewing the 2027 NOx rule to make that a little more workable for drivers on the road. And we've already seen a proposed withdrawal of the Phase 3, and so keep those reforms coming and keep listening to the truckers.
Overall, thumbs up around the table for what we've seen today, right?
Yep, thumbs
absolutely.
up,
No doubt.
100%.
Absolutely. Jay Grimes, Jim Jefferson, Lewie Pugh, we appreciate it. We got to take a break, but Trucking with OOIDA continues right after this short commercial break. And welcome back to Trucking with OOIDA. We've mentioned at least a few times on the show the ways in which Ohio is tackling the truck parking crisis, the latest being a plan to add 1,400 truck parking spaces throughout the state over the coming months, which is what led us to reach out to Thomas Balzer, CEO and president of the Ohio Trucking Association, and he joins us on the line now. Thomas, how are things in Ohio today?
Things are very good. I appreciate the opportunity to be on with y'all.
Yeah, we appreciate you talking with us, and we've got a lot of questions for you. Before we get into the truck parking news, and I certainly want to talk about that and any number of other topics that come up, we have been talking today about the EPA's DEF announcement. Just kind of wondering your thoughts. I'm sure you've been tracking all that news as well, and what you're hearing from your members about this move.
Well, it's a pretty fresh decision, so I haven't really heard much, but obviously something that where we're tracking very closely, and something that we're obviously wondering how it'll all pan out. But definitely something that's interesting to the industry, and something that we're keeping a close eye on.
Yeah. How often do you hear about problems with DEF from your members, or just from people that you talk to out there?
I think it was more frequent at the start, right? And I think it was a maintenance issue that we all run into every time we do something to these engines.
Yeah.
It screws something else up, and or we get into this maintenance piece where we got filters that have to be changed more often than we didn't know, or whatever the scenario may be. But I think it is definitely something that we unfortunately in this country have done a great job of choking these engines off to the point of being inefficient, and definitely causing more trouble from a maintenance standpoint. And so that's where we really hear a lot of the complaints is maintenance being able to adapt to it, and then obviously you have the manufacturers themselves having to adjust their practices and with that comes an increase in cost.
Yeah, which gets passed on, obviously, to everybody else out there, for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the truck parking announcement, 1,400 new spaces, which will roughly double the number of spots on state-owned land, which is wonderful news. How much did you work with the Ohio DOT on this?
From the start, this is something that we've been pushing them on. It's a big issue for me, and has always been a big issue for me. That if we're going to be able to, Ohio always talks about being the center of logistics. And its closeness to the vast majority of the population within a one-day drive, and we've seen a huge development of distribution centers in the area, and that's always been what I've said is you can't have economic development and distribution centers built without parking being part of the process, right? You have to make sure that you have the parking spots to support that, because if you're going to increase truck traffic in and out of the state, you can't do that without supporting the industry and about supporting that side of it. And we've seen a huge increase of trucks parked on the side of the road, and that's not a great place to do. And that was something that I emphasized very heavily with the committee. Is I said, most of the people in the legislature own businesses. I said none of them would ask their staff to sleep in their car on the side of a highway, just on the side of the road. They wouldn't, in good faith, do that. But we ask our folks to do that every day. And it's not right that we, don't have enough truck parking spots, that, that our drivers are, making the decision to park on the side of the road because even the on and off ramp, sides are full. So, we're asking our folks to put themselves in a pretty dangerous situation for the sake of economic development. Well, if you're going to do economic development and you're going to increase your tax base, then we got to put the money forward. And ODOT finally heard the message. The governor, it's always been a big thing for him as well. And I think he's been pushing on it, and they put it together this year and put it through the legislature and got the money to put the spots together. And, it's something that we're very proud of the work that we've done, and something that we feel actually has benefit. We do a lot of stuff, throughout the years that you don't really see the benefit immediately. And for the drivers themselves, having just availability of parking will be a huge, immediate gratification that they can, hang their hat on, knowing that they've, the state's there to back them up.
Now, the truck parking crisis is obviously bad everywhere, but how are things in Ohio?
Yeah, pretty bad. I mean, it's the scenario just like every other state. When you take a look at the statistics around every other state, every state's in the exact same situation. Every state has the same percentage of public spots versus privately owned spots, being, the truck stops and other capacities there. It's about an 80-20 split. And, it's so when you're talking about the number of trucks that are out there that run through whatever state, in the case of Ohio, if you're going to double with 1,400, it takes a swipe at it, but it's definitely something that we're going to need to stay after and continue to do if we want to be able to get to capacity where we're not putting trucks in precarious situations.
Yeah, what does that look like? So you talk about that split there. Obviously, this is going to help. This is not going to solve the problem, and I don't think anybody would say that that understands the issue there. What do the next steps look like in addressing the crisis there, and what's it going to take, I suppose, to get there?
Well, the interesting part about the money that is being spent so far is the Ohio Department of Transportation, put this money forward, and they did an engineering study of truck parking spots in the state and where they need to be placed. And they've also did a study prior to that from some work that we got done through the legislature and the budget process that showed the lack of truck parking and where they were. And what you find in a lot of truck parking scenarios is that they go where land is cheap, which is rural areas. But as we know, where we deliver is, the more urban areas.
Yeah.
So, so that's the thing is we've got truck parking spots, but they're in the wrong places. And that's the one thing that I think ODOT has done a really good job of. And I think, the other states should look at is taking a look not only at capacity, but also taking a look at where that concentration needs to be, where the heavy points are, where there's lack of truck parking and where that is, and taking a look at that. And I think, one of the things that we've talked about in the process is there a way that the state can back funding for private, truck stops to be able to expand their parking capacity? Is there ways that we can repurpose certain areas of, in different cities and different areas that, they may have abandoned areas that have, parking or already have the base there for parking that we can repurpose to be able to put that there, to be able to get them closer into the more urban areas to be able to, to provide that piece there. But obviously being in a more urban area requires more security and more steps to be making sure that you have safe places to park.
And can we give props again? And you mentioned it there, but we've been watching this obviously as this has kind of unfolded. And you mentioned the Governor DeWine there has really committed to this issue, I think, in a way that we haven't seen other governors do. And the Ohio DOT, stepped up here as well. You talked about those conversations that you've had over the years with lawmakers and, other people making decisions on a state level. It sounds like when you come to those conversations, and we hear this all the time, but you probably went in to those conversations, they didn't quite understand the problem in the ways that you explained it earlier. But over time, to their credit, they seem to understand it now. And again, credit goes to you, I think, and your colleagues there for helping make that possible. But those conversations are really important, right? And you continue to have those on other issues too.
Without question, I think that that's the most important part is the conversations. I think the most frustrating part for folks is, government is designed to move slowly, and it's designed to make very specific decisions in a very specific manner and very thoughtful manner. So it requires constant conversation, and it may take a while to do there. And it also takes a look at, what's going on. And when these conversations first started, everybody wanted some sort of technological solution to it. They wanted to develop some app. They wanted to develop something that would alert truckers of where the next truck's parking spot would be, they went through all of the technology solutions, and I kept arguing with them. I'm like, this is not a technological problem. This is an asphalt problem. There's no other way out of this. The volume and the number of truck parking spots is dependent on the number of asphalt or the amount of square footage of asphalt you lay down. So that has been part of the conversations. Everyone was looking for the easy out. In the form of some sort of technological solution instead of the hard side of, hey, we got to pay for asphalt, and asphalt's not cheap. The engineering of it, the building out of it, the services of it is not cheap. So that I think was the hard part is when you have states that are cash strapped anyway, especially when it comes to transportation money. That has been the argument. And we even talked to them about, hey, we'll fund it. Like, we will find ways that the industry can fund this. But we have to know that money is going for that specific purpose. But I think that has probably the biggest hurdle to get over was, you identified the lack of political will, and then as well as the lack of funding to be able to do it. And, when the governor stepped up and said, I want truck parking spots, like this became a priority issue for the administration. And the Ohio Department of Transportation fought for it. And we went, full tilt on it because it's obviously an issue that's extremely important to our members and your members to be able to do that. And when we got into, the side where we started getting into some heated arguments about it, we relied on you. And I think that's the interesting part about the relationship that the Ohio Trucking Association has with OOIDA is we got a great relationship. I mean, Lewie Pugh lives in Ohio.
Yeah.
And some of your board members live in Ohio. We represent the same membership profile as OOIDA for the most part that most states, do as well. And that's, I guess the benefit of putting in that coalition together to be able to get this done is when legislators started hearing from your members and my members that this is a priority issue, they had no reason to not say yes, because we had already found the money. We had already found the solution that was necessary to get it done.
Thanks to all the hardworking drivers across the U.S. from the Allen Lund Company.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
High heat and low lubricity can break your diesel fuel down fast. Summer driving means crowded roads, more stress, dust, and a bigger risk of costly engine damage. Howe's Diesel Defender protects from the inside out, cleaning, lubricating, and fighting injector wear. Visit howsproducts.com.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
And we're still speaking with Thomas Balzer, CEO and president of the Ohio Trucking Association. You know, we've talked a lot about truck parking so far. Also part of the state budget, a new measure related to CDL testing. I think the idea here is to make it more accessible for folks out there. Can you talk a little bit about what that measure is going to do?
Yeah, the interesting part about CDL, third-party CDL testing, is when the state transferred from state-run testing facilities to private testing facilities, there's still a law in the books that regulated how much they could charge, the maximum amount that they could charge. And it was still under kind of a state thinking. And an interesting part about the state is that they don't have to generate revenue. They have funding that's available for them to be able to pay for staff time and benefits and rent and all of those other things that they can offset this with. Where when private businesses do that, the revenue that they bring in is what funds that business, is what funds salaries and benefits. And what we were hearing from the third-party testing facilities is that we can't sustain this. Like, it's such a low amount of money that we just can't sustain that. And so what we did is we went through the process, and we had been talking about it for, another issue that we've been talking about for many years is, we need to be able to find the funding or allow the people in the free market to do that. Now, there again, obviously, we don't want people price gouging, but if somebody walks in and says, hey, I've got a driver and I need him on the road tonight, and I'm willing to pay you $500 to test him if you can have it done by 6 p.m., and they're willing to do it, and they have the space to do it, great. But the other thing is we also wanted to be able to say $83 is not enough money to be able to get that testing done and pay for a testing facility. And so what we were seeing happen is that people who were charging that rate were doing it either as part of their school and only testing their students, even though they were technically open to the public, that they were still full up with their own students. That's why they had the third-party tester. And then the other side of the coin is that we had so many people out there that just didn't have the staff because they couldn't afford to hire enough staff to be able to do the tests. So what this allows them to do is charge an adequate amount of money to be able to get the test done, and then also provide those services to get that done. So,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of trust that goes in that, and that people aren't going to do that. But we also know that if someone's going to go out and charge $250 a test, that they're not going to be in business very long because no one's going to be going there anyway.
Yeah, true.
I wanted to ask, earlier this year, you were involved in developing something called the Ohio Trucking Caucus in the legislature there in Columbus. It's a bipartisan group. I'm curious, what was the idea behind this?
Yeah, that's kind of been a thing that we've been tossing around for a while. You have all these caucuses out there that deal with specific issues, but no state had a trucking caucus, and I don't even know honestly if Congress even does.
Yeah.
But really, what we wanted to do is we wanted to put together like-minded legislators who said, "Hey, I want to support the industry. How do we do it?" And we put together the bipartisan group, and that's one of the great parts about representing the trucking industry is that we don't get into partisan politics. Trucking and roads are they're non-political. It's about doing the right thing for the industries. It's about doing the right thing for the country. And so we put together the group and said, hey, here's what we're standing for. If you're in, you're in. We'd love to have you. And really, we put together a pretty large group off the start of people who represent the trucking industry and wanted to be able to move legislation forward that helps keep the industry safe, but also keeps the industry moving forward. And so it's been a great success. We've had one meeting so far. We will continue to meet. And what we've basically done is taking our priority issues that we've talked about as an association and put it in front of this group and said, hey, we want to talk about, litigation reform. We want to talk about towing reform. We want to talk about, how do we, provide, the truck parking pieces, and that's kind of things that benefit the industry specifically. And it's been really great because it's been opening up those conversations in a way that is very specific to the industry.
Yeah. You mentioned a few of the issues there that you're bringing up with them. I'm curious about the group, and I can't remember offhand how many legislators are in this bipartisan group, but the makeup of them, do some of them come from trucking backgrounds? Do they have trucking knowledge, or do they come in with it? Kind of, I guess, how was this group formed, and how were these people chosen?
Yeah, I think the interesting part about that process is that, in Ohio, we've been unfortunate in that we haven't had any trucking company owners or folks who, are independent truckers as, part of the legislature, holding legislative positions. And so we were very fortunate this last election round to have a gentleman by the name of Jack Daniels, who owns a trucking company in Northeast Ohio, elected to the legislature. And he has, he's one of the chairs of the caucus. So it's been great to have that knowledge there and have him be able to share that knowledge with other members of the legislature. They're talking. And then we picked another Republican from the Senate side who's been very supportive of the industry. In fact, he was the one who carried our latest towing reform piece. And then on the Democratic side, we picked two individuals, one from Columbus and one from Toledo, that have represented and been supportive of the industry in the past and bring their own perspective from that side as well. And so it really kind of came together of past supporters of the industry and people we've had really good conversations with. And then we sent it out to all the legislative members, and we had, I think, 48 folks sign up.
Wow.
Off the start. And so I think we're almost close to 60 now. And as more and more people get to know more and more about it, I think we'll pick up a lot more. And especially since, they're being nonpartisan helps out, because then, you don't have, that black cloud hanging over your head that gets people to shy away. So
I love this idea. I obviously don't follow every state legislature all that closely. I do, but not to this degree. But this is a great idea. Are you familiar, or do other states do something like this? It seems like a no-brainer in terms of getting these issues out there and making some headway on them.
Well, I adore my colleagues, so I would imagine that there'll be quite a few more things popping up. But no, as far as I believe, we're the first and only at this point.
It's an excellent idea.
Yeah,
it's a great idea. Yeah, again, it's like a no-brainer. Whose idea was this? Do you want to take credit, or do you want to give someone else credit for it?
Sure. No, it was a conversation to myself. And we have a lobbying firm that we work with, and Michael with the lobbying firm, who's kind of our point person there. We were sitting around talking. He's like, "Hey, we should do a trucking caucus." I'm like, "That is a genius idea."
Great
we
idea.
started building it out. It actually just kind of happened just based off of a conversation that we had, just one day sitting around in the meeting room.
Yeah, I would get on the horn with your colleagues at other state associations and say, hey, this is something we're doing here, and it holds a lot of promise. I love that idea for sure.
Oh, they know. They know.
You've made it clear. All right, good.
I've made it very clear. I've told everyone I can. So
that's great.
That's good. Yeah. Zooming back out to the national level, we've seen over the past couple of months a lot of deregulatory action, from English proficiency enforcement to the killing of speed limiter proposals. The proposal. Are you encouraged by what you've seen so far?
From the trucking specific side, yes. I definitely think that, taking a look at, speed limiters are one of those things that I've always believed is a company's decision. Company that I worked for, we had them. We did that for very specific reasons based off of our fuel economy. And so that's a decision we made. And I've always felt that's something that should be made on a company by company decision process. I don't think that's something that should be mandated across on a federal guidelines thing. So I definitely feel that there is some progress being made on that end, and we're definitely taking a look at getting rid of some of the regulatory oversight that we have. It's just a little, I guess I shouldn't say little, but it's cumbersome to the industry for no specific reason, right? Other than making somebody feel good. And that's always been something that I feel that any agency that regulates any business is, if you're going to put a regulation, is that, you better have very good reasons and specific reasons for that regulation. that it may have, and when you're doing the cost benefit analysis, that should be solid. And I think that's one area that sometimes gets lost is that the hurdle of the cost benefit analysis isn't always as crystal clear as what it should be. And so, that's one of the reasons why organizations like yours exist, or organizations like mine exist, is to making sure that we keep these regulators in check and that they're doing what they should be doing instead of, sometimes running a little rogue and taking, ideas that are, near and dear to their heart and kind of pet projects of theirs and trying to ram them through.
Thomas, you mentioned Lewie Pugh, our executive vice president here. He's a Buckeye fan. I know football season's right around the corner here. I think you've been in Ohio for about 10 years or so. Have you caught on to the college football culture there?
It's been 12 years. Yeah,
12 years,
it's
okay.
interesting. I will tell anyone who asks me specifically, I'm a Buckeye fan, I'll say yes. But it's interesting, as a guy who played football his entire life. I'm not really a sports guy, so I'm a rare breed in this town. I will tell you that, because everyone in this town is a sports nut. So yeah, but no, it's definitely exciting. I love watching those games. I love hearing the hype and the people in this town. I mean, it's definitely one of those towns that definitely Ohio State football is paramount, and it's fun to see those young men succeed at something that is obviously a lifelong goal. And I've got some really good friends who used to play for them as well. And it's great to see what that kind of activity can help and further people's careers and lives.
Yeah, there is definitely the culture there, right? Is top tier. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's out of control, right? In a lot of ways, in a good way.
Yeah, it is. It's in a very good way, and it's definitely something that they love here. And I would say I've been to a lot of SEC schools, and it definitely rivals that side and that culture as well.
What's the highest level you played? You mentioned you played football.
Well, I got quite a few funny stories, but I made it through high school and got recruited by colleges, and then decided to go a different direction. And probably should have stuck it out.
Yeah, we'd be talking to Hall of Famer Thomas Balzer now, maybe, instead of.
No, I always tell the story about how I went to my first football camp and I got hit the first time and got my wind knocked out of me.
Yeah, and
I realized I was in the wrong place.
Yeah. You're like, I'm good. That's good. Yeah, for sure. Hey, Thomas, we really do appreciate your time. Love what we're seeing out of Ohio there and everything you're doing, for sure. Any final thoughts here before we let you go?
No, I definitely appreciate you guys reaching out, and happy to come on anytime and talk about the work that we're doing, and definitely want to say a big thank you to your members and what they do, not only for the industry, but to support the work that we're doing, the work that you guys are doing. I think it's one of those things I've always felt that OOIDA and state trucking associations have more in common than sometimes we lead ourselves to believe. So it's great to be able to work with folks like you, Louie, and you guys, and your teams over there to really help the industry be better at what it is, and to get the freight moved in a way that makes sense and is best for our drivers who put themselves out there.
Yeah, as you said, we're all working toward the same goal. On behalf of all the truckers out there who are working hard to make a living and keep America moving. But Thomas, again, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we will take you up on that offer to talk to you again soon.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Great talk there, Ashley, with Thomas Balzer, CEO and president of the Ohio Trucking Association. Lots going on there in Ohio.
Lots going on in Ohio. Lots of exciting stuff.
Lots of stuff going on everywhere, really. The DEF announcement is the big news right now.
We love a busy week.
Yes, we do. Yeah, it keeps us on our toes.
Yeah. And if you want to read more on the DEF changes, our friends at Landline Magazine have you covered. You can visit landline.media for all the details there.
Yeah, lots of details to go through, and a lot of unanswered questions. We'll continue to monitor that,
keep our eye on that
to see what that process is going to look like. Until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Today's episode of Trucking with OOIDA was brought to you by a dedicated team of people that includes Jim Fetzer, Keegan White, Tennille Flick, and Kim Boren.
Got thoughts? We'd love to hear them. Call us at 1-800-324-6856 and leave us a message. Or you can send us an email to podcast@ooida.com, and we might include it on the show.